recording right now. So again, thank you for your patience, everyone, with changing the date till today. I am not that tech savvy, and unfortunately, if my computer freezes up because it's downloading something, I don't always know what to do about it. So I am Hallie Crawford. I'm a certified career coach, speaker, and author based in Atlanta, Georgia. We thank you for being here today. I'm really excited to share this content with you. I have been coaching and training for just over 19 years now. I know some of you might be thinking, gosh, she sounds like she's 12, but I've been coaching and training since around 2003, and I'm 46. And we are going to talk today about 5 ways to effectively conduct successful informational interviews. And as you can imagine, taking a look at this next slide here, we work with clients on informational interviews related to their job search, but also helping them narrow down their career direction all the time. Informational interviews are a critical piece to your job search, but also helping you find your career direction. They're a great piece for expanding your network as well. And we are going to give you 5 specific tips today to help you conduct those more effectively, because what we have found is that most people know in a general sense what an informational interview is, but they don't always know how to truly conduct it really effectively, do the follow-up correctly, how to introduce themselves, et cetera, et cetera. So on our website, we do have a lot of free tools and products and everything else to help you with your job search and also career direction. Here's our agenda for today. If we take a look at this next slide, today we're going to talk about how to define an informational interview. What does it mean, so that you're really clear on the definition? We're going to talk about the common obstacles and why people either don't handle them that well or why they don't want to leverage them in the first place, or they're a little bit nervous about it. 5 ways to conduct successful, effective informational interviews. And by the way, if any of you, 2 things here, if any of you feel like after our session today, if you need to go in greater depth with this topic, feel free to schedule a free career strategy session. Just email us at admin@halliecrawford.com. I'd be happy to chat with you further about your unique situation. And also, as a quick reminder, this call and webinar will be recorded, so you will get a recording of that afterwards. But also, if you would like a copy of the PowerPoint slides so that you don't feel like you have to be, frantically writing everything down, totally get that, please feel free to email us at admin@halliecrawford.com. We would be happy to share those with you, no problem. And just as a quick reminder, we will not have Q&A today because this is a short 30-minute session. I have a call scheduled right afterwards. So if you do have questions that you want to ask me afterwards, or even 2 weeks later, something comes to mind for you, please feel free to just email me at admin@halliecrawford.com. I'd be happy to answer. So let's talk first about how we define an informational interview. Basic gist here is an informational interview is usually a one-on-one conversation with someone in an industry or role or at a company that you'd like to get into or pursue. Okay, and there are different reasons why we might conduct an informational interview. It could help you decide on the right career path for you, or it could help you determine what your next career steps would be. What is the next step in terms of a promotion, and what does that really like, so I can find out if I really want to do that. And it can also help you implement those steps as well. Getting that insider knowledge from someone at the organization that you're interested in, for example, or in a role that you'd like to be in the long run, can help give you that insider knowledge to what next steps you need to take there. It can also be a way for job seekers to expand their network and network their way into a specific organization or an industry. It's also, just by the way, it's an opportunity to practice your interview skills, because we do want you to take these that seriously. And finally, it's a great way to learn how to put your best foot forward in your job search and moving towards whatever career goal that you have on your plate. Let's take a look at the next slide here. So what an informational is, just so you know, it is an opportunity to learn what it's really like to work in a certain field or industry. And in some cases, you might discover career opportunities that exist at a company or within an industry that you didn't even know existed before. It's also a chance to get an inside perspective about a specific company and their culture before you accept a job offer. It's also a chance to make a connection in that field or industry and begin to create or expand your network in that field. It's a way to find other people to network with, because ideally that person that you have the informational interview with, ideally they introduce you to other people as well along the way, and the ball keeps rolling. And finally, as we said before, it's a way to practice your interview skills with a little bit less pressure, okay? And that, our second slide here about this, what it is not, and I always want to share this because it's critically important. It is not a chance for you to talk someone else's ear off and tell them everything about yourself and your life story and take too much of their time. You need to be focused and have an agenda for your time with them. It's not the time to ask for a job right then and there. Informational interviews are, yes, ultimately we hope that you will be getting a job out of it if that is your goal, but you're not asking them for a job, and you have to be very clear about that. I am just asking for your time to get a little bit of information from you. That's what you want to focus on when you're introducing yourself. And finally, it's not a time to goof off and be overly casual about your career goals. You do want to treat it like an actual interview and take it very seriously and use their time wisely. What we find is it's one of the most underutilized, if you will, job search tools out there. Most people feel like, gosh, it's for recent college grads. It's not for people who are older. And 9 times out of 10, our clients will tell us that they are their biggest obstacle to not just conducting effective informational interviews, but also to achieving their career goals. It's not something external, it's something that's coming from inside of you. So if you feel like, just by the way, oh, I'm too old to do this, we have just one great example of a client in Atlanta. She was a vice president at a very large construction firm. She was interested in learning more about Kimberly-Clark, contacted a woman there through a mutual connection. They spent an hour on the phone, and the woman at Kimberly-Clark said, this is such a good idea. I think that, or I wish more people would take advantage of this kind of opportunity because it's so smart. She said that she did that, okay? So just as a reminder, if any of these obstacles are the case for you, or you feel like, well, Hallie, my situation is unique and I really need to talk to you more about it, happy to do that free career strategy session, okay? So the obstacles that we find, and I want you to first notice what your kind of limiting beliefs about informational interviews might be so that you can understand how to overcome them. Some people think they're for young people, recent college grads. Some people feel like I'm too shy, I don't want to deal with this. Other people might feel like I don't want to ask for help and it's kind of embarrassing at my age or, you know, at my career level to ask for help. Or they don't want to look like they don't know what they're talking about, okay? So these bottom line are obstacles that you must overcome, because what I'm telling you today is that informational interviews are a critical piece to your job search. And by the way, on the slide here, if any of you are more introverted than extroverted, actually like I am 60% introvert, 40% extrovert. The Introvert Advantage is a great book to help you kind of step out of your comfort zone, and not just about conducting informational interviews. It's, you know, achieving the goals that you want to in order to, and kind of overcome any of the limitations being an introvert causes in terms of networking for you. And listen, I totally get it, because like I said, I'm more introverted as well. So that's a great book. The reason why informational interviews are so important is because between 60 to 70% of the jobs out there are secured or landed through the hidden job market. These are unadvertised positions that you find out about through headhunters, recruiters, or networking, okay? So it's critical. Let's take a look next at the 5 ways to conduct them effectively and move into this portion. So first of all, you need to identify connections that you want to reach out to. You need to set up the informational interview and prepare for it. Conduct it effectively, obviously. Stay in touch with them afterwards. And then after each meeting that you have with someone, you need to remain organized so you keep track of your information and what is said during each meeting. Because by the way, ideally, if you're conducting these effectively and doing what you need to do, we would like you to have at least one, if you're working full-time, at least one informational interview each week. especially if you're in job search mode. If you're not, and it's more for you to learn about, okay, how do I get that next promotion or define my career path, depending on your timeline, you could spread that out a little bit more. It kind of depends on your goal, timeline, and situation, obviously. So let's take a look at how do we identify these connections? Where do these people come from? So first of all, on the left-hand side here, you start with your phone, literally your cell phone, and go through your contacts there, because every time we talk with clients, we say, do you know anyone that's in this industry or whatever it is? And they always say no. And then in the next call that we have with them, they say, oh, I just remembered, or when I went through my phone, I realized that I knew these 2 people, or Uncle Joe knows 3 people. So literally start with those warm leads, go through your phone, check out and ask friends, family members, and then after those warm leads, start to go through your LinkedIn connections, okay? And look at first connections, obviously first, but also look at second connections, because you can ask for that introduction to a second connection through that first connection. By the way, we want you to do it that way versus going directly to the second connection. Go through the first connection and ask them to introduce you if it's comfortable for them to do so. We have had clients do that with great results. Another place to look that people tend to forget, if you take a look at the slide here, is your alumni association. My high school actually has, which I think is unusual in some cases, has a very good alumni association. So for me, I would look at my high school and I would look at Vanderbilt, where I went to undergrad. I would also look, honestly, at the University of Illinois, though, as well. That's where I got my master's degree from. So any alumni association from alma mater for you, check that out too. And by the way, a lot of universities these days, if they do not have an alumni database online that they keep up to date, they will be using LinkedIn alumni groups instead. And if your alma mater or if your education is up to date on your LinkedIn profile, and you just type in on LinkedIn, LinkedIn/alumni, LinkedIn will automatically find the alumni group for your education, okay? Also, check out and consider networking groups. Look at association meetings. And what I mean by this is industry-specific associations. What are the industry-specific associations for the field you're looking at and considering? And do they have a local chapter and a meeting coming up that you could attend as a guest, maybe even for free for one time? Social groups, don't discount this. I know it's cliche. People say it all the time, you know, networking happens everywhere. But one of our clients got an interview actually for a job, not an informational interview, but an interview by being at a wedding for his wife's family and meeting with the uncle at that time who actually had a connection at an architecture firm locally. So consider social groups as well. We had another guy who moved from Boston to Atlanta. He attended a Red Sox viewing party at a local bar, and he met with someone who worked at Bank of America who gave him a bunch of connections or a bunch of job openings that he didn't know about beforehand. So think about and consider social groups for things that you are that you have, you know, connections with others. And then obviously recruiters at career fairs, check out career fairs as well. Okay, the way that we conduct informational interviews, if you look at the right hand side here, it can be over the phone, it could be Skype or FaceTime. If the person is really important to you and you feel like would be very helpful and has great connections, you can ask them for, you know, if you can't do in person, which I understand, could you do something over Skype, FaceTime, or Zoom meeting, whatever works for you? Because having that face-to-face interaction is ideal if it's possible. But don't press on them too hard. Be willing to work with whatever parameters they're willing to do, because the goal is that you want to, at the very least, get them on the phone so that you can chat with them for a few minutes to make that connection, you know, with your voice, so to speak, versus just email. In some cases, people will only be willing to answer questions for you via email, although that's not ideal. If that's the only way that they're willing to do it, so be it. It's better to get the information than not. Step number 2 is to set up the informational interview and do so effectively, right? So we talked about this a little bit before. You want to let them know you're looking for information and advice, not a job. And like I said earlier, you can use language like, I'm looking to learn how to put my best foot forward in my search, what it's like to work in this industry, what strengths are required for this role. Those are some kinds of, or some examples of questions that you can use. One of the things that we recommend as well is once you set it up with them, send them your 4 or 5 questions in advance. I personally love this. When people do this with me and they send me the questions in advance, I feel like, wow, this person has their act together. They're not going to talk my ear off for an hour. They're going to be mindful of my time and they're going to use it wisely. So I highly recommend that you send your questions to them in advance also, so that you can prepare, or they can prepare for how to best answer you. I like this as well because I know that when we get on the phone, I have had a chance to think about what I wanted to say to them in advance, and I know that we both will be using our time wisely and that they'll take my advice seriously. And then finally, you want to let them know that you do intend to keep it brief, 10 to 15 minutes. It usually will go longer than that. So when you get on the phone or video with them or whatever it is, do check in with them. You know, I know we discussed or agreed to about 15 minutes. What is your hard stop time so that I can be mindful of the time? And by the way, you, as the person that is conducting the informational interview, you are in charge of keeping track of time, not them, okay? And if you look at the final point here on the slide, I did want to mention this because this has happened to some clients before. Even if you all have agreed to a short period of time, maybe it's 15 or 20 minutes, maybe it's 30 minutes that they said they could give you, be prepared for them to give you a little bit longer, because sometimes people get into it and they, you know, we all like talking about ourselves. And hopefully, usually people want to help other people, okay? So be prepared to have more time with them than you're expecting at the beginning. Don't just have 4 or 5 questions and that's it. Have about 10 questions just in case, because worst case scenario, you can use those for another networking connection. So have additional questions ready just in case, okay? Let's take a look at the email formula that we recommend you use to get this set up. And by the way, even if it's a warm introduction, we tend to suggest to our clients, unless they told you, call me and this is how I want to connect, we suggest that you email them first, just so that you don't catch them off guard if they're in the middle of something during the course of the day. You want to introduce yourself. You want to make note right away, let them know right up front how you found them. And by the way, mention the referral source in the subject line so that they're more likely to open up that email. Email them first, and then if you don't hear back from them, call to follow up after approximately 5 business days. Remember, people connect with people and a voice versus a piece of paper. So it could be that, gosh, the email just got lost in the shuffle, they're busy, whatever it is. So a kind, professional, non-pushy phone call and voicemail is completely acceptable. Let them know you're wanting an informational interview. You can use those words. And by the way, include times in that first email that you're available. Make it easy on them. Don't make them hunt and peck in their, you know, in their calendar and go back and forth with you. Give them times in the next 2 to 3 weeks that you can be available to talk with them. And obviously, if it's phone or Zoom or something else, you call them and initiate the meeting. So make sure that you've got their phone number and any other information you need to get that going. I'm not going to read this on the slide, obviously, because you can read it and it's too long, but this is an email template of actual text that you can use. You can use a variation or a version of this to send to people to get that informational interview set up. And it has the 3 sections, the introduction, what you're looking for, you know, adding the questions in there right at the end, and then their availability, I should say. Okay. So as part of number 2, setting up and preparing for the informational interview, once you've got it set up, here are some questions on this slide that are good ones to use as like an introductory phone call with someone. This is going to depend, your questions will depend obviously on why you're conducting the informational interview. What is your need or your goal? But some of the examples could be what qualifications and experience are required to be successful in this position. If you're more entry level, just out of school, for example, what is an entry level position in this field? What are the job titles that I should be looking at? How did you get started in this field, and how could I put my best foot forward in my job search? These are some examples, okay? And then finally, as part of number 2, setting up and preparing, you do want to do your homework. You want to do your research and make sure that you understand a little bit of background about what this person does, read their LinkedIn profile, learn more about their company or organization. Don't just go in completely cold. Show that you care enough to have done a little bit of the homework. So what are some recent trends that you've read about? Learn more about the company, not just on their website, but on their social media. Learn a little bit more about the role that you're looking at by looking at job titles and identifying some job titles that, you know, could work for you or be appealing. Read some job openings and job descriptions so that you understand at least a little bit about what's required. The more in-depth and specific you can get with your informational interview, the more that time is spent well and wisely, right? And then finally, as I said, look at their LinkedIn profile for greater background and also common ground, things that you both might have an interest in or similar background in that you can kind of connect with them. Something I heard from a speaker about networking a long time ago, which I thought was so accurate, was people connect with people more, I think, strongly on the personal level than the professional level, or at least starting with the personal level and then moving into the professional level. So if there's something you can find personally to connect with them on, whether it's kids, whether it's, you know, you went to the same college or lived in the same town or close by, if you can connect with them on that personal level, we find that in some cases that can actually be just a little bit stronger than just connecting on professional things. Okay, so just as a reminder, if you feel like you need assistance through career coaching, whether it's for informational interviews, for your job search, anything else, we're here to help you. I would be happy to chat with you in a complimentary consultation to learn more about our services. Just email us at admin@halliecrawford.com. There's no cost. It takes about 10 minutes. Learn more about your situation and how we might be able to help you. I'd be happy to give you some advice and chat with you. So our third step here is obviously to conduct the informational interview. You want to make sure you're on time. You want to make sure you track the time, like we said. Dress professionally, even if it's over video. Have your resume, ooh, sorry about that. I'm going to close that out. Have your resume and business cards handy, especially if it's in person, and then ask them afterwards if it's okay to email them your resume. Act like it's an interview, like we said, and have your questions written out. It's okay to have them written out on a notepad, for example. There is nothing wrong with coming in with a piece of paper, questions written out, and taking notes while you talk with them. Not a problem at all. And then finally, at the end of your informational interview, you want to ask them, how can I help you? Is there anyone else you think it would be helpful for me to talk to? And ask them if you can stay in touch with them and the best way to do so. So you kind of design follow-up in the right way if they're okay with doing that. Number 4 is how to stay in touch with them after you've conducted the informational interview. Immediately, we like sending an email and a handwritten thank you note, both, okay? And your resume if it's appropriate based on the conversation. Make sure you do not forget to connect with them on LinkedIn. If they gave you any referrals, make sure that you follow up with them immediately and let the person know who connected you what the progress report is and the update along the way. Keep them posted, okay? And for people that you've kind of gathered into your networking, you know, contact list, so to speak, you can check in with them every 2 to 3 months approximately. Again, depending on the person, what you discuss, and if there were referrals. The ways that you can stay in touch with people are you can send an article, you can refer someone to them, let them know that, you know, this is my update on my job search. Thank you so much. Update them on connections, obviously, they make for you. We had a client once around the end of the year, holiday time-ish. It was great because she just sent out a general thank you to all the people who had helped her with her job search that day or that year. She didn't quite have a job yet. She was getting there, but that was another way to stay in front of them in the right way. Here is a thank you note template on the next slide that you can use as part of how you thank them for their time. And then finally, tip number 5, we talked about at the beginning staying organized. So we also want you to maintain an Excel sheet to help you track your informational interviews. Who have you spoken to? What is their job title? How, what date did you meet with them? And what was said, that's the biggest part, during the course of the informational interview. And what were the action items, or what is the action that you need to take afterwards? Maintain that Excel sheet on a weekly basis. You want to have all of the information that's here and update your sheet at least once a week so you stay on top of it and on track with what's going on. The ideal for a job search, so speaking to those of you who are in job search mode specifically, is that you have an Excel sheet that tracks everything. And by the way, I'll just share this with you. We do have a job search worksheet that is great for this purpose that will help you track your search beginning to end. It has pre-filled out tabs, including a networking tab where you can keep track of your networking, informational interviews, et cetera, et cetera. But the ideal is that you should be able to just open up your Excel sheet and you know where things stand and what you need to do next. Okay, so feel free to email us at admin@halliecrawford.com. If you would like a copy of that tool, we'd be happy to share it with you. Finally, I did want to say a couple things. Connect with me on LinkedIn if you're not already. We do share articles, blog posts, and tips on a very regular basis on LinkedIn, so please connect with me for more career advice. And then I'd like you all, before we leave today, to get out your pen and paper and write down one action step that you will take in the next week to get the ball rolling with informational interviews. And while you are thinking about this and writing this down, I did want to let you all know too that some people will not respond to you. I get that. Some people will say, no, I don't have the time, or they will ignore you. This is why we start with the warm leads first, because that's your highest rate of return. What I will tell you is it's kind of a law of numbers and kind of like sales, where if you get a 10% return on the connections you try to make or your reach out, so to speak, that's a good percentage. But the more you target who you're trying to talk to and find those connections, whether it's alumni association, you're in the same industry, et cetera, the person or each person will obviously be more likely to reach out to you. I will tell you a quick story. We did have a client who she wanted to become a medical illustrator. And she looked up a local association. She lived in Oregon, and she looked up what the local association was for medical illustrators. And for whatever reason, I'm sure they've changed that at this point, but they had a list of their members on their website. She went through the list, and by the time she got to the letter B in the alphabet, it was an alphabetized list, she had already conducted 5 informational interviews with people. So please know that this can happen and it can work effectively for you. You just have to be persistent and consistent about it. Thank you all for your time today. We greatly appreciate it. As I said before, if you would like a copy of the PowerPoint, any of the tools we talked about today, or you'd like to schedule a free career strategy session, please don't hesitate to email us at admin@halliecrawford.com. Go take your action steps, everyone, and have a great day.